Okay. And then, let's see. So now let's see. Just share this screen with you. Make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Oh. Okay, so are you seeing the Department of Planning webpage? Can I get some thumbs up if that's what you're seeing?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Great. So if you Google Baltimore County Planning, this should be the link you see. And so taking you from the main county planning webpage, you want to go down to community planning, because that's where this grant opportunity lives. And then within that, click on community planning initiatives. And then the grant opportunities page, which should be the link that I shared in the chat with you all. But I'm trying to make it as explicit as possible. This is how you get to the link if you lost the link. Or, you know, if you're just trying to find it on the county website. So it's very exciting that we have this funding available. We have $500,000 available for a commercial facade improvement program. And what we're looking for from you are proposals for your organization to administer a specific facade improvement grant program in a designated target area that you identify. So a part of the county where you work with businesses, are familiar with your businesses, and you know, have a relationship already, and you know, can use this program to strengthen that relationship and improve the buildings at the same time. So we're welcoming proposals of $40,000 to $80,000 from from organizations that apply. So you can review some of what's here. The goal is to really use these funds to incentivize higher quality materials and sort of higher design standards in your sort of targeted business area that will be more eye-catching for potential customers and will communicate a sense that an investment has been made in this space, and there's activity happening in this business district. So the grant terms will be 2 years. And you should really think about, okay, how much money can I manage to get out there to different businesses within that 2-year time frame? So and think about, you know, how many businesses are likely to be interested in applying, and what's realistic that you'll be able to manage, because it does take substantial staff time to manage this kind of a program, because what you'll find is, yes, there may be some businesses that are raring to go, know exactly what they want to do, fill out the application all by themselves, have, you know, multiple bids, and they're highly motivated. A lot of businesses, you know, they're busy running their business, and so they're not necessarily, the idea of filling out an application, getting bids, and it ends up being a lot of steps, even if you try as hard as you can to make it friendly and easy, and you may end up having to hold their hand, fill out the application for them, or, you know, with them, you know, help them get the documentation they need. So it can be a real range So for you all to apply, and can be a confusing thing, that there's the businesses applying to you, and then there's you all applying to the county. So, and this process is about you all applying to the county for an allocation of funding that you are then going to work to convey to businesses. So for you all to be an eligible applicant for this program, you must be a chamber of commerce, a business association, a community development organization, or Main Street organization that has nonprofit status, is in good standing with the state, and you have a mission, it's part of your mission to promote small businesses in a defined service area within the county's urban-rural demarcation line. And then we're looking for, in the application questions, which we'll get to, some demonstrations through your past work that you have some staff capacity or volunteer capacity to promote a program in your area, review the applications, ensure that they're complying with whatever regulations may apply to your target area, and then oversee those projects to completion, manage the paperwork, manage the money side of it. As I mentioned, there are some additional resources. I'm going to come back to this how to apply section. Important restrictions to note, which are things, your individual facade improvement program can have additional requirements or guidelines that may apply to your target area. Those could be historic, they could be, design guidelines that may apply to your area, or, other things you think are important for your program. But these are things that the planning department sees as being important restrictions for all programs, any of you who apply to us. So the properties that are improved should have first floor commercial uses and be located within the URDL. The projects must not be for new construction or for national chains or franchises. We may like Starbucks, but they don't really need our help with a facade improvement grant, that kind of thing. Projects may be on a vacant building, but the challenge with that is a new tenant may have a very different aesthetic idea from whatever money you put into the building when it's a vacant building. And so for that, talk to us. But what we're looking for is, is there a signed lease for a new tenant? Is it about, there's this whole block approach that you're taking, and some minimal improvements that are consistent with what others on the block are doing will help bring this vacant property up to that standard? Or is the property just so bad that for a prospective business to even consider renting it, you probably need to do some improvements, that sort of thing. The legal property owner or the tenant can apply to you for a project, but the property owner there needs to be documentation of their consent. Improvements need to be visible from the public right-of-way, and can include things such as signage, lighting, landscaping, sidewalks, painting, awnings, windows, doors, and the parking areas, if they're open for customers. If you're improving some private employee lot, no, not through this program. Only one facade improvement grant can be awarded per sort of tax account number, so that each business gets one grant. Code violations need to be resolved. Any improvements would have to comply with county regulations and any recently adopted design guidelines that may exist in a commercial revitalization district. All work needs to be done by licensed contractors, and you will need to obtain proof of that. We can't pay you for work and then you can't pay a business in turn for work that was initiated prior to their applying for funds. So if they started a project 2 months before you announced this program, unfortunately, that any expenditures wouldn't be eligible. Now, if they sort of stop and then we can, if you have questions, we can certainly talk through that later. But if there's a way to separate parts of the project and they're, they completed one part but not another, then perhaps that other part could be eligible. And you'll need to document the projects. And this is important both for the county to be able to document that funds were well spent and care was taken in verifying that things were implemented as we were told they were implemented. But it's also really good for you. You will have a bunch of before and after photos, ideally, that are things you can share on social media, on your websites. It can be a great tool for generating excitement about your ongoing work in a commercial district. So with that said, are there questions about any of that? Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to.
Hey, Amy, I'm checking the chat room.
Okay, good.
So far, no questions.
Okay. Okay.
Question?
Sure.
Sorry. So if you have a property owner who owns multiple properties and is looking to apply for different businesses at those properties that the property owner owns, you talk about one tax account number. So can you talk about how that relates to if a property owner with one tax account number is applying for multiple businesses?
So I think in most cases it would mean one business. If you have a property owner who has a property that has 5 different businesses and it takes up a whole block of your commercial district, for example, we can talk about what that would mean for you. Okay. But the idea is to spread the wealth. That's the idea. Are there other questions at this point, or I'm thinking that when we move into the application, there might be more questions. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop sharing that. And see if I can share this. So as I mentioned, the application deadline is July 25th. We're trying to give you some lead time because, different vacations, other grants that are due for some of you, etc. So don't feel that you have to wait until July 25th to submit your application, however. And you can feel free to review the application and then email me, ask me questions. We can set a time to talk through your questions. That's all fair game. We want as many people to be successful in applying to pursue this kind of a program. This isn't about, oh, you missed one box, so you're disqualified. The hope here is to have it be something that we get many applications for, the money gets out there in the community, and many different commercial areas can be improved. So, all right. I am going to try and share the actual application now, which is on the link that I put in the chat. It's on that page. And now you should be seeing Façade Improvement Grant application for local business associations. Is that working out? Yes, good. So There are a couple of things about this application that which just went live from our IT department earlier today, unfortunately. So there are a couple of things that need to be updated, but most of you received by email a copy of these questions when David Birkenthal sent out an email a couple of weeks ago about this. So these questions there may be one or two minor alterations to these questions in the next day or two, but otherwise these are the questions. Obviously the legal applicant. The purpose of having a proposed target area for your program is because it's important that these funds not just be available for the businesses that you like the most, or your brother's sister, your brother's sister might be you, your brother's mother's, no, same thing, aunt's friend. It should be an explicit and transparent process through which you advertise this opportunity to businesses in your area that you want to work with, and everybody has an equal opportunity to apply. So that's why we're asking you to define a target area geographically, and we're looking for, what's the approximate number of businesses with ground floor storefronts within this area that you want, that could be eligible for this program, and why are you choosing this area? The other reason to have a sort of targeted geographic area is so that there's a more visible impact. When I worked in Dundalk, if we'd spent $50,000 on improving businesses all over Dundalk, chances are nobody would probably really notice that something had happened, because it would be so spread out that, yeah, you might notice that there's a new sign here or there, but it wouldn't have the same potential revitalization impact. So yeah, that's the question I want to try to eliminate, but we're looking for you to be able to describe, not lengthy, in a lengthy way, briefly, 2 to 3 potential projects within your target area, and how funds could be used to improve those buildings. And again, this question is really because we're looking to see that you've thought this through a little bit. You have a sense of what kinds of improvements would make sense within your target area, given some of the restrictions that I went over. So, the chain stores are not, the national franchises, they're not going to be eligible. So if you have any of those, they're not the ones that would use these funds. So then who's left, and what kinds of things would they do? If you've got a difficult property owner who's, nobody can ever reach, you may really, really want to reach that owner and fix that property. And it's fine to mention that, but you probably also want to have a backup plan, right? 2 or 3 or more other projects where maybe it's a locally owned property, or just you have more of a relationship with the business that's there, so that within a 2-year time frame, it's realistic that you'd be able to spend the money. So it's not that you can't aspire to address challenging properties, but I would encourage you to not hang your hat on fixing the 3 most difficult properties in your area where you can't even locate the owner. I think that might be unrealistic. But again, if you have questions, feel free to email me and ask those questions. We want to know how you're going to promote your program. So I mentioned, we want everybody to have an equal opportunity at the outset. Now, that doesn't mean you can't then follow up with, reached out, everybody's been made aware within your target area. If they're key properties that you really want to make sure get access to this, you can follow up and pester them as many times as you want. But everybody needs to have a starting point where there's an equal opportunity. And tell us who's going to do this? Who's going to promote it? Is it going to be a staff person? Is it going to be a volunteer? a board member, who's doing what, which is about getting a sense of what's your capacity to do this. Because it takes time even to just promote the program. Tell us a little bit about what your review process is going to be when a business applies for the funds you have available. You don't need to reinvent the wheel with this. It can be, well, we're going to have a design committee that's, a lot of Main Street programs, they would have a design committee that reviews the potential projects, interacts with the business owners to gather, any additional information, or, they may say, well, we're okay with this, but not these other things. That's totally fine. But just think about who's going to review it. It should be more than one person with your organization that reviews potential applications. Tell us about your past experience managing grants and working with businesses. And that's about, telling us about the relationship you already have. And then tell us a little bit about how you manage your overall organization finances. I realized I need to, this is me putting in placeholder language because all of these questions are required because we want to make sure you answer them all. But I can't show you the next page of the application without filling something in. If you answer the questions by saying blah, 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 that won't look good. I wouldn't recommend it. So then the second piece of this application is a budget. We want to know how much money you're requesting. As I said, it's between 40 and 80,000. If there are other funds that you're bringing to the table with this program, so you may have some state funding, you may have, I don't know, some money from a foundation. If you don't have to have matching funds, but if there's funds, other funds you're spending on this same type of work, makes your application look better. And then if there's in-kind support, so staff time to manage the program, volunteer time to manage the program, that's where we want you to tell us, what's the dollar value of that time? Is it $25 for a volunteer? Is it, I don't know, $20 or $30 for a staff person? And then how many hours of that time are you guesstimating? And then you can include that as in-kind time. And then what hasn't yet been added to this application is it's supposed to have slots for you to upload the other pieces of the other required documents, and these are not yet in the survey as it's configured. So so hopefully those will be there by tomorrow or Friday at the latest. But the other pieces that are required in addition to those questions and the budget that I just went over are county application for financial assistance, which is a fillable PDF form, which you will then upload into the survey link. And that's a form that I think everybody on this call has filled out before for CRAG or other grant opportunities from the county. That form will be provided on this website. A list of your current board, which is something that many people put in the application for financial assistance. We'd like you to provide it as a separate Word document just to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information on that. And then financial statements, which are also kind of standard things that you would submit with an application for financial assistance to the county, which, depending on the size of your organization, could be a 990 or an audit from a prior year. It could be profit and loss statements. At bare minimum, it needs to be some bank statements. And that is kind of that's the application. That's what's needed. to submit by July 25th. So I've talked a while now. So what questions do people have?
Amy,
Mhm.
thanks for putting all this together and for having this WebEx for us to go over the process and ask questions. When you're asking for the legal name of the applicant on the application, is that the community association in my case, or whoever's applying
That's
for the funds?
the name of the nonprofit that is
Okay.
applying for the funding. So sometimes people put their personal name. That's not what I want. That's
I
not
didn't
what
think
I
so,
want to
but I
see.
wanted to be
Yeah,
sure.
I understand. No, I appreciate that.
I have a couple other questions
Yeah.
too. I forget which, and it's not up, but I can actually pull it up because I also have it, where you have to estimate how much you think I think you're picking 2 or 3 potential projects in the business area and how you estimate the cost. How do you do that if you've never had any experience with this before, which is me totally?
I understand. That's fair question. I think that's challenging. So I get it that that's challenging. So what's most important, we're just looking for, have you thought through what kinds of projects might be eligible for this funding? So you can say, maybe this costs $10,000, but I'm not sure. And I will look at that and see if there's a different way to word that so that it's not asking for something that people may not be able to have a real handle on. But we're really just, the main thing we're looking for is that you've thought about the kinds of improvements that businesses might be able to make.
Okay.
So I'll
And
look at
then-
that.
Thank you. And then the last question is where you had, I think it was the last page of the application where you ask for the amount of money and then you're estimating staff hours versus volunteer hours. And I mean, in my case, we're all volunteers and I don't think anybody would be charging the grant. But is that what that means?
No,
That you
yeah.
conceivably could? I mean, we're not, I don't think it would be in our
No,
mind to do that because
you
we're all
can't actually. So
Okay.
the point of that section, which is about in-kind hours, and this is a great question, is that that's value you're bringing to the project that is not part of what the county funds can be used for. The county funds can only be used for the capital, the physical improvements to the businesses. So the in-kind funds, and those of you who have applied for CRAG are more familiar with framing this. It has to do with, volunteer hours or staff hours that you're spending to implement the program, either that you're donating to the project or that's being supported by another funding source. So
I guess
So
is it just for then the county's kind of information that, hey, we have 10 volunteers that have volunteered, 5 hours total time? Is that just for you guys to see, like, kind of what people are putting into this, since it's not coming out of the grant monies at all, which, like I said, is fine. We weren't expecting to make any money personally from this, but
Right.
Is that just for your information?
It is, you'll often see funders of any sort looking for other sources of support for a project. And so
Okay.
acknowledging the volunteer hours that you will be donating to the project. It's an opportunity for an organization to acknowledge the range of a fuller accounting of the range of resources you're actually contributing to the effort, even if it's not a monetary value. And we're encouraging you to propose a value. So you can Google, sort of volunteer hour calculators online, things like that, and you'll get slightly different responses. But when I started in nonprofit land, the standard rate was $10 an hour. Well, you know, that's below minimum wage. So so no, that doesn't seem like a fair. So we're trying to find a way to acknowledge that donation time, but you know, and acknowledge that those contributions. That's, I don't want you to get too hung up on, you know, this isn't about, well, the one volunteer has a law degree and blah, 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 so their time should be worth. No, that's not the point of this. It isn't about trying to, you know, turn yourself into a pretzel, valuing different people's time, or it's about trying to have some sort of placeholder acknowledgement of volunteer efforts.
Thank you. I got it.
Hi, Amy. This is Namida. I have a question.
Sure, hi.
So going back to the restrictions, suppose there's a business, he has a ground floor store front, but this person resides on the first floor. His residence is on the first floor, so the property shall have a first floor commercial use and be located within the URDL. They are located, but the first floor commercial use, so they don't qualify for this grant?
It sounds like they have a business, but it's
They
not
have a
on the first
business.
floor.
Suppose they have a restaurant in the ground floor and the business owner resides on the first floor of that building. So do they qualify for this?
I'm sorry, is the business on the first floor?
On the ground floor.
So it's in the basement? Or I think we may just be not, I may just be not understanding the difference between ground floor and first floor.
Oh, okay. So you mean the basement and then that is the first floor. So he resides on the second floor, that means.
Correct. Yeah. So ground floor in my speak, and you know, good question. First floor, where the door opens and you don't fall out a window, but you're
Okay.
you're walking out onto the sidewalk.
Sure. Okay. Got it then. Thank
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Mm.
Yeah. And that's great if you have a business owner that also resides in the building. That's wonderful. So
Just to save some rent. Yeah, that's his building.
other questions?
I had a question, Amy. This is Arkia. Great presentation. As far, I know you stated that the timing you'd have a term of 2 years. Do you know, like, once it's accepted, like when the money will be
Yeah.
dispersed?
Good question. And I had some notes on that I didn't go over. So it's due July 25th. I am hoping that we internally to the department, we will have recommendations by the middle of August. And then, you know, we very much want to get this money on the street as quickly as possible. So we have recommendations by mid-August. It then needs to go through the internal to the county grants review process, which again, most of you are familiar with from CRAG applications. So that process can take 2 to 3 months with multiple steps involved. And you know, I will work to try and get that moved along as quickly as I can. But given what I just said, you would likely be able to start spending money on your specific facade improvement program somewhere between mid-October and mid-November, based on the timing I was just laying out. It has to go through an internal grants review committee. Then county council has an opportunity for 2 weeks to potentially ask questions about any grant that's being recommended for approval. That I haven't seen that happen yet in my limited time here in the county, but that is, you know, it's checks and balances. That's their opportunity to do so. Then there's a grant agreement process where I will send you a grant agreement to sign, and then it comes back to us and has to get a bunch of internal signatures. So those are the different pieces of that process, after which I can then cut you a check. So that's it. You may or may not need to know all that sausage making, but that's what's going on when I say that between 2 and 3 months internally, that's what's going on.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So mid-October to mid-November start. Well, you know, that's not the ideal time to start construction, right? So, you know, there may be some things though that can get done, signs that can be designed and ordered, those sorts of things. If there's larger construction projects, it could be they need to wait until the spring, but a minimum you could be doing outreach about your program to the businesses and working with them to think about what they want to do. We can be helping you with that as well. There are some other county resources like Architect on Call that may be able to be brought to bear in some instances to provide some design support. And I am anticipating that following when you all submit these applications to the county, those who are recommended for funding, that we will then, you know, work with you to, you know, troubleshoot any questions you have about how you're designing your programs, and that can start how you can be designing your program and getting all your materials together, so that when your grant agreement is fully executed, you're ready to go. Because there's some steps you'll need to take as well. So. Other questions? Okay, so as I said, there are a couple of things that clearly need to be fixed in the grant application portal. I don't think those are huge deals, but they're just things that need to be fixed. So I suspect that'll be done, like I said, by the end of the week, because I don't think those will take very long. I will send out an email to all of you when all of that, you know, it's like, this is it. This is the final, this is the link. If you should, most of you should have received also sort of draft materials by email. And if you didn't, you know, you can feel free to email me and let me know. My email is amenzer, AMENZER, at baltimorecounty.md.gov. And I can send you those materials so you can begin thinking right away while you're waiting for this, the grant application page to be fully updated. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me and I will respond, and we can set a time to chat if that is what works best. So. Other questions or anything maybe my colleagues are noticing that I failed to mention that should be brought up now?
I'm sorry. Hi, this is Carolyn. I'm with Southwest Visions. It's so nice to be on
Great.
the call today. I just had a quick question. This is my first kind of in-depth grant process, application, etc. When does the 2-year stopwatch kind of start ticking? So
Good question.
when is my timeline? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
That starts when the grant is fully executed. So at the end of that process that I just, all the little steps, how a bill becomes a law, so to speak, with your grant. So some, you know, when the grant's fully executed, somewhere between mid-October and mid-November, I write a little date at the top of the grant agreement, and that's your clock. So, I mean, it'll be in the grant agreement, this specific date. So you don't, but roughly that's the clock.
Amy, I just had a question. It kept coming up among my group. I don't think we're going to encounter this, but the question was asked repeatedly for me to find out. What if we do not spend the amount of the grant that was awarded to us? I can't imagine that not happening, but.
I understand. Well, I mean, that is why, and I know it's difficult if you've never managed construction and you don't have a sense of how much stuff costs. Good news, materials keep going up. So, so they're likely to cost more than you think. I would encourage you to bite off you know, if you don't spend it, your options are probably going to be, well, if you're making progress, meaning you've had 2 years, you've, worked on some projects, but maybe not spent all the money, but you think if you had another year, you may be able to spend all the money, then that's a conversation and the grant could conceivably be extended. It would requires an amendment and it's not an automatic thing, but that's a possibility. It looks bad if you leave money on the table. It looks bad to our department if there's money hanging out there that people aren't spending, that's been allocated, but it looks bad for you in pursuing a future grant application if the funder sees that you haven't spent all the money. So I would encourage you, email me. We can talk about, how many businesses are in your business district that, are potentially eligible for these funds. I can try to help come up with what seems like a realistic budget given that, and, we can go from there. But
Thank you.
other questions? As I said, it's getting to the end of the hour. Feel free to email me. I'm happy to chat with any of you individually. And, hopefully this gives you some time to think through your proposals, and look forward to getting this money out on the street. So.
I'm sorry.
Sure, it's okay.
Sorry, y'all. Okay, so we're applying for one grant for multiple facade projects, or one
Correct.
grant for
Yes,
individual?
and it is
one for all.
so.
Okay.
You are applying to the county for a pot of money that you are then proposing to dole out for multiple businesses to benefit from. That's
Thanks.
the rough the rough idea here.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. The business is then going to apply to you for one project.
Got it.
And hopefully multiple businesses will apply to you for.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you're applying for a pot of money that's between $40,000 and $80,000. So that's not $40,000 or $80,000 to improve one property, although many properties could certainly, it's easy to blow $40,000 to $80,000 on a property. $40,000 to $80,000 is to help serve multiple properties in your targeted business area. And no, it's not going to fix all of your problems. It's not going to solve everything, but it's a place to start. And it's, what we're hoping is that, we'll see some success from this. And, my hope is certainly that we'll be able to, expand this program in the future and offer additional funding in future years, if things go well. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody. I look forward to hearing from you, seeing your proposals, getting your emails, and talking to you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good day.